فلذلك فادع واستقم كما أمرت ولا تتبع أهواءهم وقل آمنت بما أنزل الله من كتاب.
الحمد لله وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So in our last class that we had in usool al-imaan and Durrat al-bayan fi usool al-imaan, we were talking about the place of what is iman composed of. So we talked about what it's composed of having iman in Allah, and we talked about that iman. There's an inner and there's an outer, and there's a part that we say and there's a part that we act upon, and and all of these different aspects of iman are a part of iman, like the actions that we do, whether they're obligatory, whether they're like mustahab. All of these things are parts of iman, and in this next chapter, we're going to talk about another word which is like iman, which is Islam. And sometimes these two words are used together, and sometimes they're used individually. So we'll talk about that, and then in the next chapter, after this short chapter, we'll talk about the different levels of iman, because of course not all iman from every single person is the exact same, because some people they have more iman and other people they have less. And what does this mean for the person who has more iman and the one who has less iman? So the first, so he's the author here, Dr. Mohamed yousri, hafidhahullah, he says al-mabhath al-thani, which means like the chapter 2, and then he says al-alaqa bayn al-islam wal-iman. And as I said, these two words, the connection between Islam and Iman, these two words, they come together, and there is a connection between these two. And when they come together, they mean different things as when they're apart. They also have certain meanings as them. As we would say, Iman, a lot of times we would translate it into like belief, but this word is much bigger because it encompasses the actions that we do as well. And so here he says, وَالْإِسْلَامُ وَالْإِيمَانُ عِنْدَ الْإِطْلَاقِ وَالتَّجْرِيرِ يَتَرَادَفَانِ. So he says here that Islam, the word Islam or Iman, when mentioned individually, they're synonymous. So what he means by this is not that they don't, it doesn't mean that they're synonymous in every way, but they usually mean each other if they're used individually. A lot of times they will, if you only see Iman in one point, this encompasses Islam. And if you see Islam in one point, this encompasses Iman. And so they hold this general meaning that is accomplished by this, and we'll talk about that. And then he says here, وَعِنْدَ الْإِقْتِرَانِ وَالتَّقْيِيدِ يَفْتَرِقَانِ. And so he says here, in the time when they are mentioned together, or in certain contexts, or like where they have a certain extra meaning that's attached to it or in its context, then they mean different things. And so this is a general concept, and it's not set in stone. It's not like there's no exceptions in this, but this is a general concept. Whenever the deen is mentioned or Islam is mentioned together with Iman, then the deen means one thing and Iman means another thing. So he talks about what do these things mean. So he says, فَالْإِسْلَامُ هُوَ الْأَقْوَالُ وَالْأَعْمَالُ الظَّاهِرَةُ وَالْإِيمَانُ هُوَ الْاعْتِقَادَاتُ وَالْأَعْمَالُ الْبَاطِنَةُ. And so he says here that Islam, in this case, if they're brought together, or they're in a certain context, there's other like evidence that this is meaning something other than both of them. Then he says here that Islam is the exterior sayings, it's aqwal, or it's like exterior sayings and actions. So Islam refers to what's on the outside. So what we would see from somebody, if they made the shahada, this is Islam, And if they went and they prayed salah, we see them praying salah. This is Islam. And if we see like them giving charity, this is Islam. And then in a more specific sense as well, Iman is, he says here, Iman is the beliefs, like i'tiqadat, which is the beliefs and interior actions. And so, like these interior beliefs and actions, these are the things that are that would be iman in this case. So these two words, they come together, and when they come together, then one will have, like, Islam will be pointing to what's on the outside, and iman will be pointing to what's on the inside. But there is definitely a connection between these two. And so he says here, ولا بد من اجتماعهما في العبد فلا يكفي إسلام بدون إيمان ولا إيمان بدون إسلام. And so he says that there must be both of these together in the servant, or the abd, which the servant also could mean worshiper, as I mentioned before. Like, these two words go together. And so Islam without Iman is not enough, and neither is Iman without Islam. So these two, they go hand in hand, and they can't necessarily, you can't separate one from the other, but one has a certain meaning that it points to more than the other. On one side of the spectrum, on like the outside side of the spectrum, as we talked about, we have Iman al-Zahir, the one that we see, like the apparent Iman, and then we have the Iman that is on the inside. And so this is where Islam would be like the Iman that's on the outside, and then the Iman that's on the inside would be like the having fear of Allah, and having and looking forward to meeting Him, and also the beliefs that we hold on the inside, and these actions of the heart. These are things that would be that Iman on the inside. And so this would usually take the form, we would usually, when we see Iman, when it's brought together with Islam, and so we would see that Islam is something that is on the outside, and then we also have Iman, which is on the inside. And there's a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ, he was giving out and different things to many people. And one of the Sahabi said to him, "I give this guy, please give this guy something from what he's giving out, because he's a mu'min." He said he's a mu'min, and which is that he has that iman. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Oh Muslim," he's like, or a Muslim. And then he said, "Please give him something. He's a mu'min." And then he said, "Or a Muslim." And then he said it, he repeated it again, and he said, "Give him something from this, because he's a mu'min." And the Prophet ﷺ, he then corrected him and said, "Yeah, or Muslim." And of course, the Sahabi that they were referring to, without a doubt, he was of the mu'mineen. But the Prophet ﷺ was trying to get across a point that this is one thing that we see. Like, we see that he's a Muslim, but on the inside, this is something that is like the mu'min is something that's more between him and Allah. And the Prophet ﷺ, at the end of the hadith, he says, he's like, "Verily, I give people, I give to people that aren't the best people, because I fear for their belief. If I didn't give them, they would probably, maybe they're weak in their iman, and that they would, but I give them so that their iman will increase, and they'll have a love for Islam, and then later they will become firm in the deen." And so this is a part of the generosity of the Prophet ﷺ, that he would give people very generously when it comes to these matters, especially new Muslims, so that they understand that Islam is something that is about giving. It's not about people trying to get things from other people, but rather this is something that is a very big part of it. And the Prophet ﷺ, he knew that this other person, his iman was in a good place. This is why he didn't give to him. But he also, in this, he used it as a means to show the Sahabi who was telling him to give to him because he's a mu'min. He used this as a chance to show him that there's a difference between what we see and what is on the inside. And so, and without a doubt, like the Sahabi that were mentioned in this hadith, like, of course they were mu'min, they were those believers of a high caliber. But the Prophet ﷺ, he still wanted to show this. This is something that when we talk about someone, we can always say that they're a Muslim without any doubt. But to say they're mu'min, just like using that word by itself, it's something that is pointing to the completeness of that person's iman. And so this is something that there's a difference between these words when they're put together in this sense. And so the author here, he said that there has to be both of these together. And so it's not okay for there to only be Islam without Iman. And of course, as I mentioned, without as he mentioned as well, without the inside, there's no exterior. Like this, it doesn't work with only one side or the other. You need to have both of these together. And also, if there's only the inside without an exterior, then this is also a problem. You need to have both of these together. And so it's not enough for someone to just have Islam, which is what is on the outside, without Iman. And this is like a munafiq. A munafiq is someone who has Islam on the outside, but he doesn't have any Iman. This person is he's in the hellfire for eternity, and in the deepest depths of the hellfire. And it's not okay for someone to have Iman without Islam. They need to have both of these together. So of course, if somebody believes and they have certain of these characteristics, but they never bring out any sign of Islam, then this is not enough. This is not enough for that person. Or if they believe, they say they believe, but they only act with a couple things from Islam. Maybe they fast, but they don't pray, or something of this sort. This is not enough for that person. Yes, we still say that they're Muslim, but in this case, we would say that this person is not. They're not at a place where they are where they're sufficed. This is not sufficient to save them from the hellfire, and this is something that is very important to understand, and we'll talk about the details of this. So the next thing that he says وَمَرَاتِبُ الدِّينُ ثَلَاثَةٌ أولها الإسلام وثانيها الإيمان وثالثها الإحسان في الاعتقادات الباطنة والأعمال الظاهرة. So he says here, in that the levels, and there's 3 levels of the religion. The first of which is Islam, as we mentioned here. This is like the actions that are seen on the outside. And when the Prophet ﷺ, when Jibreel asked him, alayhi salam, when he asked him what is Islam, he said that it's to bear witness that there's no one worthy of worship but Allah, and tashhada an la ilaha illallah wa anna muhammad rasulullah, and so wa iqamis salah wa ita'iz zakah وحج البيت وصوم رمضان أو كما قال. And so that he said that it's these 4, it's the shahada, and then it's also the establishing the prayer, giving the zakah, and going fasting and making hajj. So he said all of these things when he was referring to Islam. And then when Jibreel asked him, فَأَخْبِرْنِي عَنِ الْإِيمَانِ, what is Iman? Then the Prophet ﷺ, he replied with that Iman is an tu'minu billahi wa malaikatihi, and so it's to believe, and tu'min, which is to believe in Allah and His angels and His messengers, and His books and His messengers, and in the last day, and in qadr, the divine decree, the good of it and the bad of it. And so he gives this level of Iman. And then the next level that the Prophet ﷺ, when he was asked by Jibreel alayhi salam, that Jibreel, he asked him, أخبرني عن الإحسان. And ihsan is, like I translate it here as excellence. And it's it's like in giving the best, and like making something good, and for someone to do good. And this is of like that highest level, so that's why I translate it as excellence. And he said here that this ihsan, he said, is to worship Allah. The Prophet ﷺ, he answered him and said, to worship Allah as if you see Him. And if you can't see Him, فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكَ. And then if you don't worship Him in a way as if you see Him, then you worship Him in a way as you know that He sees you. And this, of course, is a higher level than just doing the things that are required of you to do, but rather having that awareness that you're doing this with Allah watching you, and when you're doing this, you're doing it in a way that you're aware of Allah and that He's watching you as if you see Him. Of course, this is a different level of working and ibadah than the one who basically does what's required of him, but he doesn't quite hold this level or awareness with him. And these are 2 different levels. And so we see as when the Prophet ﷺ, at the end of this hadith, this famous hadith, he says that Jibreel came to you to teach you your deen, to teach you your religion. And so that's what we see here, that these are the 3 levels that Jibreel, he asked about each one of them. And as we can see that the first one was in regards, like Islam was in regards to the actions that we do, and the shahada that we say. And then the second one, which is iman, has to do with what's inside, what's in the heart, what's in that, with what we affirm and we believe. And then the third one is how we worship Allah to the best of our ability, which combines that action of the heart of like muraqabah, and that we understand that Allah is watching us, and that we act in a way as if we see Allah. And this is of the greatest levels, and these are the three levels that are mentioned in this very famous hadith, and that are a part of the deen, and that we would look back to and see that. So the author after this, he's going to go into the next section, which talks about the different levels of iman in and of itself. And there's certain levels of iman, and in general, there's people that are they have the bare minimum. The bare minimum for them to even be considered Muslim. And these people are, in general, subject to the hellfire, because they didn't quite make anything more than just the very, very, very bare minimum, and they did a lot of sins and whatnot, and their iman is very weak. And then there's a group of people that are in the middle. And by the middle, they do what's required of them in a general sense, and for whatever mistakes they have, they make tawbah from that. And they hold to the bare minimum of what they should do and what they should have in their iman, and they stay away from what is required, what is prohibited from them. And these people, then they will not be subjected to the hellfire if they have this level. And then there's a level above that, which is of even more levels like of that. And this is like, we would have the first is like the salihin, which is the person that's salih is the person that does good. He increases in his good deeds and whatnot. And then we also have the shuhada, like the people that are like the martyrs, and they have this type of iman. And then we also have a siddiqeen, which is the people that have this iman that is very, very, very strong, and they are like like Abu Bakr was a siddiq. He was called as-siddiq, which means that he was always behind the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with whatever he said, in every single action that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did. He was 100% behind him in all of that, and his level of iman was of the highest levels of iman. So we call him a siddiq, and then this level is like a very high level of iman, and this is the highest level for the average person. And then there's the level of iman, which is even above that, which is of the anbiya. And so we have these different levels of like the anbiya. They have a very, very high level of iman, of course, because they are constantly in interaction with the wahi, or like the revelation as it comes. So this is the highest level of this. And so this next chapter, he's going to talk about these different levels of iman and what do they mean, and in a general sense, so that we can understand what does this mean for the individual with this. And as a note, like, this is very important to be focused in this chapter, because we should understand that yes, there's some people that are in that fall into this first level, and there's two groups that in general they went astray in this kind of chapter and understanding, in an extreme way. And the one group, they're called the Khawarij, which they would basically, the best definition of them is, it's someone who commits, like, they basically do takfir on somebody, or they take them outside of Islam for doing something that doesn't take them outside of Islam. Like, this thing is something that's wrong, or it's something that doesn't take them outside of Islam, but they use this thing to take that person outside of Islam. And this is what the first Khawarij that did this, they're the ones who went up against Ali and whatnot, and they would say that he was a disbeliever because he didn't do what they thought was something that was obligatory for him to do, or he didn't rule with the ruling that they wanted. And this particular group, will find the remnants of this group all over the place. And usually like ISIS and a lot of these other like terrorist organizations, they will fall into this category a lot. And the reason that they fall into this, or like the reason that we'll see some of their crazy acts of like terror, which most of the times are pointed against actual Muslims, which shows that there's a serious problem here. That they will actually go up and like harm Muslims and whatnot, because they basically say that these Muslims are no longer Muslims. So then we would kill them because because they were Muslims, and then they are now disbelievers and whatnot. And they basically make people disbelievers without the sufficient evidence to do this. And of course, this creates huge problems. And so understanding that that the basis of iman is with somebody, this is something, as long as we know that this person is Muslim, then their blood is haram. Like, this is something that it's not permissible for anyone to like kill a Muslim in any shape, in any way, shape, or form, unless it's in qisas or something of that sort, for like another like specific matter. But this is one of the things that the Khawarij, they would go off in this sense, and they would actually go out and commit. They'd say that different people were disbelievers, and they would basically then use this as an excuse to go. And a lot of them, they would use this as an excuse to go and like overthrow the leader that was there. And this particular manhaj, or this path, is something that's usually based on desires. It's not usually based on something that is very like knowledge based, but rather it's usually based on desires and political agendas. And a lot of times we'll find that there's different groups in Islam that they're not actually like belief system groups. As yes, they encompass parts of it, and they have issues with it, but a lot of it is ultimately politically like inspired. Like, the differences are political, and that's important for people to be aware of some of these groups that are sometimes called about. The biggest difference with them is that they're politically aligned this way or that way. And yes, there will be issues in the deen that have been influenced by their politics, but this is something that is a political matter, in addition to the fact that they have certain misunderstandings within the deen when it comes to these things. But this is the Khawarij. They will take people outside of Islam. And then there's another group that is like the Khawarij, except that they didn't take them outside of Islam, but instead they said these people, we say they're Muslim, but with Allah they're subject to the hellfire for eternity, and they never come out. And this is the Mu'tazila. And they wanted to take they didn't want to make the ruling for this person like in this life, but rather they said for the afterlife they have the ruling of a disbeliever, and that they will be for the person who does the big sins, the major sins, then he will be in the hellfire for eternity. And just because he did these major sins, and Allah threatened these people, so Allah has to come through with his threats. And of course, there's a difference between Allah coming through with his threats and like for every single person that does something. Like, for Allah is not bound to make good on every single one of his threats, but all of his promises that he makes, which are of good, this is something that Allah will, without a doubt, he will come through with every single one of his promises. And the difference in Arabic would be like, you have wa'id, which means a threat, or something that is like, if you do this, I'll do this, or like, whoever does this, they get this. This is their punishment. This is what we call a wa'id in Arabic. And then there's a wa'd, which is whoever does this thing, like usually it's a good thing, then this person who does this, they will have this reward from me. And so, like, in general, for someone to give a threat, and then at the end of the day, if they say, I forgive you for that, this is something that is praiseworthy. Like, if we see someone that threatens somebody and they forgive people from that, and they don't follow through on that threat, then this is something that is praiseworthy. And of course, Allah doesn't lie. When Allah threatens that this will happen, yes, it will happen to someone, but it doesn't mean that every single person that falls into this thing that Allah gave a threat on, that it will necessarily befall that person. If they're a believer, then Allah could forgive that individual, but it will happen to someone, because Allah doesn't lie. And so this is the belief of al-Sunnah wal-jamaa'ah. But the Mu'tazila, they went into saying that every single threat must be accomplished on every single person that falls under that threat. or like that did the thing that was being threatened, then this person must be punished. And then they didn't just say that he must be punished, they also had the understanding that anyone who entered the hellfire would stay in the hellfire and they would never come out, and that the people would not come out of the hellfire. And this is something that comes in a hadith that there's a very, very lengthy hadith that's narrated in Sahih Muslim, and also in parts of it are in Bukhari. And it's that on the day of judgment, that the Prophet ﷺ, he'll make intercession for groups of people, and of the groups of people that he makes intercession for will be people that entered the hellfire, and he will intercede for them, and Allah will take them out of the hellfire. And even he will take out the people that were in the hellfire in different like there will be different times of each time that there will be certain people that are released. Of the people who prayed, they will be released first, and of the people that were very, very sinful and whatnot, they will be of the later ones that are released from the hellfire, until there's no one that's left in the hellfire that has even a grain of mustard seed of iman. And so this is a very clear hadith, and there's so many different narrations of this hadith in different ways that it's very certain that the Prophet ﷺ showed us that people that enter the hellfire, it's not that are Muslims, that have that grain, a mustard seed of grain of iman, that they will be taken out of the hellfire eventually. And so and of course we seek Allah's refuge from ever even entering it. And this is the belief of al-Sunnah wal-jamaa'ah. So when we see someone who's in a serious state of like when they're not a disbeliever, they're not falling into things that are disbelief, but they're constantly falling into serious sins, whether they're like addicted to drugs or other things of this sort. Like this is something that's a serious, or they left salah, or they left like doing a lot of the obligatory things, or they cut off relationship with their parents and whatnot. This, of course, is a serious matter, and this person is subject to a serious punishment in the hellfire. If Allah judges according to His justice, then this person would be put into the hellfire from this. And this is something that we believe that people can go into the hellfire, and then they can be taken out from this, from the hadith that come in this area. And in the Mu'tazila, they have a problem with some hadith. Like they won't take a lot of hadith when it comes to like i'tiqad, and when it comes to belief and whatnot. They say that matters of i'tiqad, or that comes of like Islamic creed, this has to be taken by something that is has to be taken by something that's qati, or something that's like super, super clear cut, which can't be interpreted in any way. There's no ijtihad in it. And in reality, the things are very clear cut, but they won't take it from hadith. And this is like that. We can see bits of this when we have these people that are like Quran only people that want to talk about, oh, we only need the Quran, we don't need anything else, and we throw away the Sunnah and whatnot. They a lot of times they'll stem back and they'll say, oh, we just follow the Mu'tazila belief in the way that they take their things, and this is an excuse for them to follow their own desires in the reality of the situation. And so this group, they basically said that anyone enters the fire, they can't come out of it, and they basically gave it like as a eternal sentence for any of these people who enter it. So the Mu'tazila, the difference between them and the Khawarij is what they say in this life. In this life, they say this person's a Muslim. Like this person's a Muslim. We're not gonna like overthrow him or take him outside of Islam or anything. But we will say that this person in the afterlife, he's gonna be eternally in the hellfire. And these two groups, the Mu'tazila and the Khawarij, they went off in this way. And there's another group on the other side of the spectrum that is of the people that basically said that iman is just basically affirmation, and in the affirmation itself, this is something that is that's just believing. It's just believing. It's the bare minimum of believing that this is true, and they say it's like knowing. And so then they go on this side, and they don't say that any of the actions are from iman itself. And this group would be called the Murji'ah, because they took the actions outside of the reality of iman, And of the people that we see in these days of the Murji'ah we see the people of like the Ash'aris and the Maturidis. These people are they hold this belief that Iman is something that is just it's something that is knowledge, but isn't, it's knowledge and tasdeeq, which is like affirming that this is true, or like and even if someone didn't say it, they still believe that this person is a mu'min. Like of this, they say that a mu'min, that this person is a mu'min even if he doesn't say it, if he believes it in his heart. And so this is of the extremes, and this is very close to a lot of what a lot of like the Christianity, the versions of Christianity that are out there. Most of them are of this type of Murji'ah, where they basically think that that belief is just something that you have in the heart and whatnot. You don't have to do anything, but everything is just in that way. And so they hold this view, and this is a far view. And other people have held this view to a point where some of like the Karamiya, which is actually like a very, very far sect, they actually held that someone that just says the shahada, then this person is a mu'min even if he's a munafiq. So like this person is a mu'min even if he's a hypocrite. And so this is of course very, very extreme. And these people were very, very far outside, removed of what Islam teaches. And a lot of the people have said that these people, like the people that are clear of this sort, that these are not even Muslims. Wallahu ta'ala alam. So going to what the author here, he says in Mabhath al-Thalithu, hafidhahullah. And he says that this is the chapter 3. And he says maratibul iman, and which is levels of iman. And he says وإذا كان أصل الإيمان تصديق والانقياد جملة وعلى الغيب فإن كماله الواجب فعل الأركان والمفروضات وترك الكبائر والمحرمات. So he says here, and if the foundation of Iman, which is called the asl of Iman, like the bare minimum of it, is affirmation and submission in a general sense, and in the unseen, like and of that believing, and also he says فَإِنَّ كَمَالَهُ الْوَاجِبِ, and kamal al-wajib is the obligatory completion, like that it's complete of what it's called for, is. And he says this is doing the pillars, the pillars of Islam, and also the things that are obligatory for, and of other obligatory actions, and leaving off major sins and disobedience. And then he says the next part, which is وَكَمَالَهُ الْمُسْتَحَبَّ and فِعْلُ الْمَنْدُوبَاتِ وَتَرْكُ الْمَكْرُوهَاتِ وَالْوَرْعُ and فِي عَلًا عَنِ الشُّبَهَاتِ. And so he says here, and then the completion of it, what is mustahab. And he says, and the mustahab completion, which is like what is over and above, what is like obligatory. He says this completion of Iman is doing the extra good deeds, leaving off disliked matters, and staying cautiously clear of doubtful things, which is called wara'. And so these are the things that bring someone into. So there's kamalahul wajib, which is one level which you need to have this. Like this is something you have to have. If you don't have this, you're a sinner. And then there's kamalahul mustahab, which is above and beyond. And this is something that is great to have. And this is, of course, what raises someone's levels in Jannah and raises their ranks with Allah. And so he says, what are these levels composed of? These levels are composed of the actions that we do. So, of course, the obligatory completion of this, of Iman, is doing the arkan of Islam. So, of course, like praying, fasting, giving zakat, making hajj, and all of these things are part of the obligatory parts of Islam, and also helping other people out, going into jihad for the people that it's called for. And this is something that, of course, is something that will be the main part of this person who has this complete iman. He will be on this side, and also. The next part that he talks about is that the person that has this completion, like this completion is of the mustahab, is this person who does a lot of the extra good deeds. He prays the salatul layl, and he also prays the other mustahab prayers. He also gives extra in charity, and he goes out and goes farther than what is called for him. He does, of course, he does all of what is called for him, and then some. And this person has this this completion of the mustahab. And so this completion is, if we were to liken iman to a tree, you could have a tree that is sick and it's almost falling over, and a lot of things are weak, and this is someone that hasn't reached this obligation, the obligatory completion. And then you have a tree, it's it's sturdy, it's there, it has all the pieces that you need. It's a tree, of course, and it's growing, but it's not necessarily like the strongest tree out there and whatnot, but it's there's no problem with it. And then you also have something that's just absolutely flourishing, and this is like the kamal mustahab. And all of these things, of these three levels of whether or not it reached the obligatory completion, it's still a tree. And this is of like the people that are out there. They're of different categories, and they can be of different levels here. And the next thing that he says here, he says, وَالْإِيمَانُ يَزْدَادُ بِالطَّاعَاتِ الْقَلْبِ وَاللِّسَانِ وَالْجَوَارِحِ وَيَنْقُصُ بِمَعَاصِيهَا فَكَانَ مَرَاتِبَ وَدَرَجَاتٍ. And so he says here that Iman, it increases with acts of obedience in the heart, tongue, and limbs, and it decreases with disobedience. So it is of various levels and degrees. And this is, of course, one of the biggest things that al-Sunnah wal-jamaa'ah, they have ijma' on this issue, that Iman, it increases. Like, it's not something that is just like affirmation, or like affirmation as like the Murji'ah or the Ash'aris and the Maturidis. They will say that Iman is basically as affirmation. So your affirmation of believing that something is some way, it can't go up and down. It's either there or it's not there. And so they hold this view, and because of this, they don't say that Iman actually, the reality of Iman goes up and down. And so they will, when they see that there is ijma' in this issue, they'll run around the issue in this particular issue, and they'll say, oh, the things that come from Iman go up and down. But the reality of Iman is very clear that Allah refers to the Iman of the person who listens to the ayat of Allah, and that his Iman increases, that the ayat of Allah, they increase this person, and they increase this person's Iman, and also that Allah does things to increase the Iman of the believers. And so, of course, if Iman is increased, then we understand that before that it was less. And so this is a very important principle that we understand, that Iman goes up and down. And it is in this going up is encompassed with doing actions of ibadah and of worshiping Allah, and doing actions of obedience, whether it's in the heart, whether it's that having fear of Allah, and having taqwa of Allah, and having that khashya of Allah, and that like respect and honor of Allah in our heart, or this is something that is also in our tongue, such as us saying the shahadatain, and also of the limbs. And like the way that you could see that the Iman goes up and down with the tongue is if we're going to say that someone said the shahadatain, and for someone who is there's not a people of the book, like this person is someone who worships like someone, say like one of the tribal religions in Africa. They worship so many different gods. If they say la ilaha ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, this person enters into Islam. Like just with that, they enter into Islam. And of course, once they know about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then they need to follow him, and they need to understand, and they can't say anything like against that he is also that he is a messenger of Allah and the final messenger, and they have to believe everything that he says. But they enter into Islam with just the first part of the shahada, and without even having to say wa anna mohamed Rasulullah. So this person enters into Islam with la ilaha illallah. But if someone is of the, if like someone's a Christian, for instance, this person who's a Christian, he will say this, like he'll say that there's no God except for one God. This is not something that's new to him, but rather he thinks that Jesus is a part of that one God, which of course doesn't make sense. But he needs to add to this that anna mohamed Rasulullah, and so he needs to add that the Prophet Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. So that encompasses, of course, believing everything that he said about Allah, who Allah is, and that Isa is not a part of that. So if someone were to come and to say this, then this person becomes a Muslim. But if there's a group of people that they believed that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a messenger of Allah, and they also believe that there's no God worthy of worship except Allah, but they believe that the Prophet Muhammad was sent to the Arabs only. And so this group, for them to enter into Islam, they have to add something to the Shahada. They have to add in that he was sent to all of mankind, like that he was sent to all of mankind as well. And so they have to add this thing to the Shahada. And anyone who takes something, or if they fall away from something, or if they deny something in the deen that is a part of the deen, they fall outside of Islam. And when they come back into Islam, they need to come back with the Shahadatain, and they need to come back with the negating of whatever, or with the affirmation of whatever they negated from Islam as well when they come back into Islam. So if someone says that it's not obligatory, like Hajj is not obligatory, this person, they fell outside of Islam, and so when they come back in, they say they give the Shahadatain, and then they say, and I testify that Hajj is obligatory. So they need to add this. And so this is a way that the iman can increase and decrease with the tongue itself, and like the what we would say. And this also increases like the iman as well. And when we know different details, say somebody knew that there are prophets, and we believe in all the prophets, but they didn't know that Idris was one of the prophets, and they didn't know about him at all before. So then they heard his name, and they heard that he's a prophet, and he's mentioned in the Quran. So they believe this. Then their iman grew into the matter that they believe this. Or they hear a new name of Allah that they've never heard before, such as al-Latif or al-Khabir. They never heard this, or they didn't know, or some of the other names of Allah. And so when they hear this, then they learn about it. Then all of a sudden their iman increases in what they would say, that they testify that Allah is this. And so this is of the ways that iman would increase when it comes to the tongue. And with the limbs, of course, with the actions that we do, when we increase our good actions, then this increases this is very simple for us to see how that iman increases. And also with the disobedience, it decreases as well. And so as we see, as if it can increase and decrease, then people are going to be at very different levels. Like this is the natural understanding. If it's increasing and decreasing, then someone's going to be less at one point, and they're going to be more at another time. And then the people that are more at one time, these people in relation to other people around them are going to be at different levels in different degrees. And so here's where the author, he starts to go into the different levels of this, which I mentioned kind of in general about this. So he says, وَأُولَى مُرَاتِبِهِ الْإِيمَانُ الْمَانِعُ مِنَ الْخُلُودِ فِي النِّيرَانِ. And so he says, and this is the first level of this, is iman that stops someone from an eternity in the hellfire. And this is from staying in the hellfire for eternity. And as I mentioned before, this is that iman that anyone who has that bare minimum, that grain of mustard seed of iman, then this person will be pulled outside of the hellfire. And there will be no one left in the hellfire that has even a grain of mustard seed of iman in them. And so this is that first level of iman, and this is the one that this person's a Muslim, and but he's a very bad Muslim, or all of these can be this level doesn't negate the levels that are above it. So someone could be at this level, but they're not at this level, but all the people at this level, they have this, if that makes sense. And so this person will this iman will stop them from an eternity in the hellfire. And this is the bare minimum of iman, or like the bare minimum of what will benefit somebody with iman, and what someone would be called a Muslim, but of course not a mutn, like at this level, except with something such as like that they're missing in iman. And so this is the first level. And it's iman that stops someone from an eternity in the hellfire. And this is called the foundation of iman, or al-imaan. And he says, وَقَدْ يُسَمَّى al-imaan أو مطلق الإيمان أو al-imaan al-mujmal. And so he says here, and this has different names of it, and I'll give them in Arabic because these to translate them it's a bit difficult, and it needs an explanation. So the first one, which is, he says, this is called al-imaan, which is the foundation of iman. It's like that, as you would say, it's like the root or the seed of this iman. It's there, like this is there, and what it comes from. That iman is there, and this is one of the ways that this is called, this first level of iman. And the second one is mutlaq al-iman, that this is iman at its bare minimum. Like this is, it's iman, but it's at its bare minimum. And also al-iman al-mujmal, which is it's iman in a general sense that you can call this iman, and its reality. And then he gives a definition here of what it is composed of. He says, وَحَقِيقَتُهُ التزام العبادة لله تعالى وحده فلا يتوجه بالشعائر إلا إليه وإفراده بالطاعة والانقياد فلا يرجع في التحريم والتحليل إلا إليه وإن أخل صاحبه الظالم لنفسه بالواجبات وقارف السيئات ما دام مجتنبا للنواقض المكفرات. So he says here that this is this iman, what it is composed of first is the reality of it is holding to the worship of Allah alone. So he only worships Allah, and that he holds to the fact that worship is necessary for him, and he understands this, and he worships Allah, and and he holds to that, and that it's only for Allah alone. So of course he doesn't worship anything others outside of Islam, because that takes him outside of Islam. And so he says here, so he doesn't direct any type of worship to anyone else. Of course, this is a part of the bare minimum of being a Muslim, that we don't direct any type of worship to anyone else. And he says, making him the only one for obedience and submission. And then this is another part of that, which is that Allah is the only one that we obey. Of course, it doesn't mean that we don't obey other people, in a sense that this is encompassed in obedience to Allah is obeying like your parents. Like this is encompassed in that, and obeying Allah is like to obey the people that are put in authority over us. Like this is the sense, but this is not that we obey them in spite of Allah, but rather we obey them because of Allah. And so making him the only one for obedience and submission. And submission is the key thing as well that he puts here, that we submit to Allah alone. And this is of the strength of the Muslims, is that that submission is something that's an act of worship, and this is for Allah alone, and we don't submit to other people as that. And if we ever do, like on the outside, like say we give in to something on the outside because of external forces and whatnot, this isn't a submission to them with ourself, but rather this is just an exterior submission. If we have to submit to like someone who has power over us, or gets the best of us with in war or whatnot, but this doesn't mean that we in our inside we submit to them. We submit to Allah alone. And this is something that needs to be directed only to Allah alone. So he says here, so he doesn't look for anyone else to make things haram or halal. And so this is a part that we understand that of the rights of Allah is to make something haram or halal. And we don't look to anyone else to try to change this. So if we see that Allah has made something halal and haram, then we know that this is Allah's rights, and it's not our rights to make something halal or haram. And of course, the secularism and a lot of democracy and whatnot, they think that of their core beliefs is that it is the right of mankind to choose for themselves what is right and what is wrong. And this, of course, is kufr. This goes against what Allah has prescribed for us, and it goes against every single religion in reality. And this is something that is a clear clear-cut thing that goes against what Allah has commanded us to do something, and for them to say, you know, it's your right to choose if you want to make this the rules, or you get to make the rules in your life, you get to make the rules in your society, and these things. This is something that ultimately we look to Allah and to make things haram and halal, and we don't look to people. And this is of the type of shirk that the Jews used to do when they would let their leaders make things haram and halal. And the same things, we can see this with the Christians, how they constantly are making more and more things halal until that there's no such thing as haram with them. And so, and going on what he says here, he says, even if a person of this level, one who is oppressive to himself, comes short of his obligations. So he means that this person that is in this level, even if he's still of this level, even if the person of this level, the one who is oppressive to himself, ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ, this is a term that's used in the Quran to refer to this person that is oppressive to himself, whether it means he's oppressing himself or he's oppressive, and this oppression is pointed towards whether he's oppressing himself, like he's the victim of his oppression, or he's oppressive, and this is something that comes back to him. And then this comes short, even if this person is someone who is oppressive to himself and comes short of his obligations and commits sins, as long as he stays away from the nullifiers and kufr, the nullifiers that are kufr, that takes one outside of Islam. These are the things that, if this person, as long as they stay away from the things that negate Islam, then this person is still, like, they still have this asl of iman, like this foundation of iman. And this is something that would be the thing that saves them from an eternity in the hellfire. And we seek Allah's refuge from ever entering it. And so this is important to understand that, yes, someone can be, they can be a very sinful Muslim, and they can be someone who does a lot of serious issues, but as long as they stay away from the things that actually negate their Islam, then this person is still a Muslim, and he's still, at the end of the day, he'll enter Jannah. Like, and this is important for us to understand, as this is a very serious issue, and of course, nobody should ever want to be in this level only, like, because this is a level where that someone who's in this level, this is a way that someone who's in this level, they could very easily fall outside of it. So normally, if you have like an area that you're trying to be in, you're gonna veer out of it a little bit. So someone who only, like, he prays the salawat, the 5 prayers, then if he only prays these 5 prayers, there's a chance that every once in a while he's gonna get tired. And when he's tired and he feels lazy, when he misses something, he's gonna miss one of these 5 prayers. But if there's a person that prays all of his mustahabat, he prays all the good prayers, when he gets tired, then he's going to fall into just praying the 5 prayers, or missing some of them, and he'll still keep with some of the mustahabat. But if you have someone who is constantly in this weak state of iman, and he's constantly doing haram things, he's constantly watching things that he shouldn't be watching, and listening to music, and all of these things around him, these things are calling him to kufr, like in the majority. So it's going to be, if he slips, he's going to slip into kufr, as opposed to someone who is doing the things that are called for him. If he slips, he's going to fall into something that's less than kufr. And the majority of the people that would fall, they wouldn't fall all the way down all of these levels at one time. And of course, this is something that no one should be content with being in this small level, because it's very dangerous, especially in the West. Because the people, if they don't learn about their deen, they're very liable to falling into things that go completely against the deen, such as if a woman thinks it's her right not to wear hijab, like, this is kufr. Like if she thinks it's her right to not wear hijab, like, this is her right as a woman, that she doesn't need to wear hijab. Like, this is a type of kufr, and this is something that is, of course, pushed by the society that is disbelieving, and they will push a woman to the point where she believes this is her right not to wear hijab. And of course, she's a person that is created by Allah, and she's a slave to Allah, and she's Allah's property, and so her rights are according to what Allah gives her. And if Allah didn't give her that, then that's not one of her rights. And this is important for everyone to understand, because there's certain things that will come up, and when one sin piles onto another, it can very easily become kufr. And so this is something, of course, we don't call this on somebody unless it's clear and that the evidence has been given to them. But this is for like these individuals that fall into these things. There's many times we'll see that some of the people that get heavily involved in liberalism, and they think that they're doing something right, and they're claiming that they're Muslim. I'm a liberal Muslim, but what is this liberality that you're saying? This is actually saying I'm free from worshiping Allah in the way that I'm called to worship Allah, and this is my right to not worship Allah. No, you're a slave of Allah and you're Allah's property, and it's and you don't have a right to do what Allah commanded you not to do. That's not your right. And so this is something that occasionally people will fall into these. But as long as they stay away from these things, say if you have a very bad Muslim, maybe he commits zina and he does all of the things, but he stays away from things that are kufr, this person, okay, he's in a bad situation, but he will enter Jannah as long as he stayed away from the things that negate Islam. And so the next one, going here, we'll talk about just in general, and then we'll stop here. As he says, وَأَوْسَطُهَا الْإِيمَانُ الْمَانِعُ مِنْ دُخُولِ النِّيرَانِ. And so he says the middle level is the iman that stops someone from entering the fire in the first place. And this is called, he says, وَقَدْ يُسَمَّى الْإِيمَانُ الْوَاجِبِ الْإِيمَانَ الْوَاجِبِ or الْإِيمَانَ الْوَاجِبَ أو الْإِيمَانَ الْمُطْلَقَ أو الْإِيمَانَ الْمُفَصَّلِ. And so he says this is called, of the names that it's given, is the obligatory iman. This is the iman that is obligatory for someone. If they have this, then they won't enter the hellfire. And then he also says wal-iman al-mutlaq, which is this is that iman that if you say this person is a mu'min, then this person you can just say this person is a mu'min because they do all of what is required of them, and they stay away from all the things that is not required of them. So this word, if it was put onto them, just mu'min, this applies. And of course, this is something that is, in a sense, it's tazkiyah, or it's it's raising someone's rank. So we try to be mindful if we ever use this word on people, that we're not puffing people up in some way. But at the same time, this word, mu'min, if it was put onto this person, it would be correct for them to be just mu'min, and if the mu'min is referred to in the Quran in a sense of praise and whatnot, this is the person that is being referred to, the person who does what's called for him to do, and he stays away from what is prohibited. And also al-iman al-mufassal, and this is, as before, there is the iman al-mujmal, which is kind of in a general sense, like this person, the person that has al-iman al-mujmal, he has a general sense of iman, but he doesn't know any of the details of it, and he doesn't have any of the the details of how this goes out. He doesn't necessarily have this. But the one person who has iman al-mufassal, this person has the details that is required of that iman, and it's put into play. And so these are some of the words that are for this middle level, how it would be called. And then he says here, وتضمن مطلق الإيمان وزيادة فعل الواجبات وترك المحرمات وهذا كماله الواجب وأهله في الفضل على المراتب. And so he says, and this iman encompasses mutlaq al-iman, which is that bare minimum of iman that we mentioned, which saves someone from staying in the hellfire eternally. It encompasses this, but it's with the addition of the obligatory actions and leaving off the things that are haram. And it's this completion of the obligatory iman, and it's the completion of the obligatory iman and its people. So this is something that is the completion of the obligatory iman, and its people are on varying levels. So the people that are on this level, they're of course on different levels of this, because they might come short in some areas and they'll make up it for with other areas, or they'll have other things that put them above, like from the mustahabbat, the kamal and mustahab, that puts them above, like this completion of things that is mustahab. And so inshallah we'll stop here, and there's we're close to the end of this particular chapter, and we'll finish this inshallah in the next class as we move forward. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
فلذلك فادع واستقم كما أمرت ولا تتبع أهواءهم وقل آمنت بما أنزل الله من كتاب وأمرت لأعدل بينكم الله ربنا وربكم لنا أعمالنا ولكم أعمالكم لا حجة بيننا وبينكم الله يجمع بيننا وإليه المصير.